So tonight we're going to talk about telepathy and the complete human, and I'm going to focus on three areas about this, because this talk could be like 20 hours long, because the human potential is unlimited, and this is one of the things I want to get across to you guys tonight. So let's start and look at the myth that we're under. Okay? The myth that we're under is that we possess 5 fairly dull senses. I mean, our eyesight isn't as good as a hawk. Our sense of smell isn't as good as a dog's, for instance. So we've been told that we've got these 5 senses, and they're not very good. We have low individual intelligence. Really, I mean, we're taught that we are very smart and everything, but essentially we have low individual intelligence. I mean, if I put you guys on a desert island, how long before you can send me an email? We can't. We don't have. Our strength is in our collective intelligence. Physically weak. The myth is that maybe bench press a couple of 100 pounds, but much more than that, nah. We're not very strong. I mean, a chimpanzee is pound for pound much stronger than we are. Comes to disease and damage. I don't even have to talk about that. And the other myth is that we communicate solely by some kind of vocal or by some kind of sign language means, and that's the only way we can communicate. The obvious is that we will deteriorate and grow old and sort of fade away and eventually die. And the only thing that will save us is technology and pharmacology. That's the myth. And most people, and I imagine most of you, believe at least some of those. Am I right? Yeah? Audience participation. Yes, Dave? So let's start sort of dispelling some of these myths. I don't know if you can all read that at all. We've all seen instances like this, where a mother suddenly finds the strength to lift a car off a baby or something. In this case, this is a skinny 22-year-old girl finds her dad pinned under a BMW, which is a 1.5-ton car. And not only does she lift it in that moment, but she throws it aside and saves his life. So the point about this is, if by some strange crossing of wires, she was able to find that strength, then that strength is in all of us. It's a potential in all of us. And the difference here is that in that moment, when she lifted that car, she wasn't thinking about what she couldn't do. She was just thinking, got to save Dad. But when we go to try and lift a car, we're thinking, this is going to muck up my back. This is going to be too much for me. I'm going to try though. It's not enough. Autistic savants. Again, another example of where somehow wires get crossed in the brain or there's some medical issue, and the result is something amazing. Now, I don't know if you've come across this guy. His name's Stephen Wiltshire. Anybody heard of him? Yeah. I remember seeing him when he was 6 years old, and he was able to do things like this. This is when he was taken up in a helicopter for 45 minutes over New York, and came back down and started drawing this. And literally every detail of that 45-minute experience is in there, down to the last crane. So, I mean, again, this is buried somewhere within us. And there are autistic savants, all sorts of guys that can do all sorts of different things that we would consider absolutely unbelievable. But yet, it is within our experience, because if one human can do it, then all of us can do it. We just don't know how. This was a kind of late edition. This is a little boy. He's a teenager now who had his eyes removed. He had cancer of the eyes, and his mother, instead of supporting like, well, we can get you a dog and stuff like that, she said, "You're not blind. You can see," even though he didn't have any eyes. So what he did was develop echolocation. He was able to, from reflected sound, ambient sound, and sometimes he would make clicking sounds, he's able to build a picture of the world. Which we might think is a bit, well, you know, it's a hokey way of seeing. But this kid can do literally anything that we can do. And it's not a hokey way of adapting to the loss of his eyes. If you think about it, what your eyes are doing is picking up the reflected light off of all the objects around you, and you are building a picture based on this reflected light. What he's doing is picking up the reflected sound and building the same picture from the reflected sound. So he, in effect, he is actually seeing in the same way that we are, but with sound instead of light. So I just thought I'd make that distinction. Many of us probably have seen instances of this, where somebody receives a blow on the head or has a stroke and wakes up completely fluent in another language. This is a guy who woke up from a stroke, Welsh, you know, down to the accent and everything. And the only time he was in Wales was when he was evacuated there in the war. Couldn't speak the language, but he literally woke up speaking fluent Welsh. So that kind of experience, which isn't uncommon. This has happened. I found about half a dozen instances of this, just with, you know, a day's worth of searching. This isn't uncommon, which means that the way we see language isn't quite the way it works. And again, if it's within a person to do this, then it's within all of us. This guy, basically, he's been able to hone his meditation to the point where he can sort of sit in a bath of ice water for 2 hours, where any of us would perish after about 10-15 minutes. This guy can sit in ice water for 2 hours. He actually swam under the Arctic ice for, I can't remember what the distance was, it's something there somewhere, but you know, in conditions that would kill any normal person. But he can accept it. Now, I don't know if anybody caught a Derren Brown episode where he hypnotised somebody to ignore the fact that he was going to be dumped into ice water. Anybody catch that?
Yes, sir.
Well, basically, yeah, he hypnotised somebody and told them that the water was lovely, essentially. And he got in it and he was sat there quite comfortably. And yet, after he was taken out of that and he was made to sit in it again, he couldn't take it. He couldn't take it after a few seconds. The point is that you know, it's the mind has direct control over your physiology, and with proper training, you can actually control any kind of pain, because essentially pain is just electrical signals, the same as the electrical signals that just went from my fingers to my brain when I tap the table here. Just electrical signals. And you can tell your brain, well, I don't want to accept those signals. And I'm going to change the way my body is going to react to this searing cold, which I don't believe, or I can't feel. And you can do things that apparently will kill somebody. again, it's in the mind. Oh, I threw this in because I was blown away by this. In the States, there was an initiative called One Laptop Per Child. And what they did was they made these solar-powered laptops, very cheap ones, and the initiative was to go over to Africa and give every child access to technology. So, as an experiment, what they did was, instead of going over the laptops, giving them to the children, and training them how to use the software and all that sort of thing, what they did was leave these laptops in sealed boxes and just dumped them in the middle of the village and left. See what happened. Now, bearing in mind, none of these children could speak English, and all the software was in English. They expected nothing to happen. They came back 5 months later and found that not only had the kids learned English, they learned to use every one of the, I think it was 47 applications on that laptop. They learned how to use every one of them, and they were also teaching their parents English so they could use them. But they also hacked into the operating system and turned on the camera that was disabled by the programmers. That's a feat that even hackers over here would find difficult. But these kids who couldn't even speak the language hacked into the operating system. I couldn't even do that, and I'm a computer programmer. This is the potential of people who have no, let's say, formal education. And I think I'm speaking to a crowd that know what education is really about. But without education, with just their unlimited potential, they're able to just figure stuff out. So basically, we are incomplete. We are disabled as such. We've been told that we have 5 senses. The ancient Sufis basically tell us that we have 360 senses. And we're kind of limping along on 5. It's like, as I say here, it's like having a 200 mile per hour Ferrari and restricting it to 6 miles an hour. We are disabled. And what I would like to propose is that we've been trained out of our natural abilities. And last thing there is our technology is an attempt to recapture what we once could do innately, like telepathy. So we've got the mobile phone. We feel we recognise it on some level that we have the ability to talk to people who aren't right in front of us. But the telephone is our kind of crutch to allow us to do that. But also, I believe it's something that's actually restricting our ability to do that, to use our natural abilities. So I'll just go through a few senses that we're not, really aware of. The first one there is proprioception, which actually means knowing where in space your body is, where your parts of your body is. So, you can close your eyes and touch your fingers together because you know where in space your parts are, which we take for granted. But it's a sense. You sense where you are. You've got to close your eyes and you sense where your hands are, where your feet are. I had a bit of a cannabis experience actually at the Truthjuice festival. I will not telling people off of it. But
it's okay, just go ahead, you got permission from me.
Okay. But I was eating some resin and I started feeling it, and I closed my eyes and I lost that sense of proprioception. I felt my right hand was over there somewhere and then I was here and my leg was over there. I was like, whoa, what's going on? So that's a sense we take for granted. Another one is balance. That is a sense we know when we're slightly off balance. We know. We also know or can sense acceleration. And it was very interesting that there was a scientist who went up in the space shuttle, a civilian scientist, and it was his first ever, trip in the shuttle. And when he came back to Earth, the first thing he noticed was he had this sense that he was falling all the time. He was standing on the ground. His senses were telling him he was falling, and he had to sit down because he couldn't take it. And the feeling sort of subsided after a while. But the fact is, we are falling all the time. We are accelerating towards the centre of the Earth, but we've got used to that feeling, so we don't sort of give it pay any mind. But since he was weightless and he came back down to Earth, he felt that acceleration towards the Earth. But yes, obviously we're born into this environment, so we take it for granted. But it is a sense that we actually have. The other one is to detect magnetic field lines. They did experiments, best with children actually, where they put them in a swivel chair, blindfolded them, spun them round, and then pointed them in a certain direction and said, which direction are you facing? And 9 times out of 10 they got it right, innately. And then they also repeated experiment and put strong magnets around the head, and they lost that ability. So we can innately detect the Earth's magnetic fields, just like most animals can. Well, I'd say all animals can. We can detect polarized light, and I know it's a fact, but I personally can't see the relevance of being able to detect polarized light. I think, though, that's not useful. There's a difference between when the sun's rising and the light shines through the atmosphere one way. When the sun's going down, the light's polarized in a different way. It's not very useful, but I know when I've actually stayed up for 2 nights in a row, and you lose that sense of what time is it? What day is it? And you go out, but you do know whether it's the sun's actually rising or falling or setting. But again, I can't find any actual real use for it. But we have that ability anyway. We can also detect water. Like every other creature on this planet, we detect water. But we can't access that ability directly. We have to find a way to tease out these senses, or this sense, and we do that with dowsing. And what happens when you're dowsing, and I had a little bit more of an explanation than last night, but when you're dowsing, you innately sense the water, and your subconscious starts to make little micro movements for you, and then it causes the rods to cross, because you're accessing the senses sort of indirectly. Okay. And the last one, and a very interesting one, and I say the last one, but there's probably lots more that I could have added to the list, but that would have been a 3 or 4 hour tour. But we can detect when people are looking at us. There's a scientist called Dr. Rupert Sheldrake, who's done lots of experiments with people that we sense when somebody's looking at us. Has anybody ever felt that? Knowing that somebody was looking at us and turn around and they were? Yeah? Well, it's a real phenomenon. What it kind of suggests, well, it's more than suggests, it tells you that the act of seeing or looking at something isn't a passive reception of light photons. It's an actual reaching out and connecting with whatever you're looking at. As strange as it might sound, that's what's going on, and you can detect, that pressure or that connection when it's made. To the point where people have been able to, as they're walking down the street, feel that somebody's looking at them, turn around and look directly up at a window where somebody's looking down at them. Yeah? And as I said, this Rupert Sheldrake has actually, proved this experimentally. So in quantum physics terms, it's kind of called quantum entanglement. So you are sort of entangling yourself with whoever you're actually looking at. So that kind of neatly leads on to telepathy. So yeah, most of us have actually experienced it. Who has experienced some kind of telepathy here? Well, now, mainstream science will say telepathy is impossible. But yet, you know, how many people put their hands up? Everyone has felt something or experienced something that they couldn't explain, apart from saying, well, it's a coincidence. This response was not a coincidence. Doesn't show a coincidence. So one of the ways that people have noticed telepathy is they know who's on the phone before they pick it up. And there was a BBC experiment where they got the Nolan sisters. This was Dr. Rupert Sheldrake again. They got the Nolan sisters. They sat one sister in a hotel room, and the other sisters were kind of distributed around the city. And periodically, one of the sisters would phone the one that was in the hotel room, and she had to guess which sister it was. And she got it, I think, 60% of the time, which is way above chance. So it's not just a coincidence. We have that sense.
You can participate in that experiment, can't you?
Sorry?
You can participate in that experiment.
Yes, you can online.
And he'll phone you up or something.
Yeah, online you can get together with a few people, participate in this experiment, and check your score, which is pretty cool. In places like Norway, as I said up there, there are actual words in other languages to express that experience. In this case, Vardogger or something means the anticipation of arrivals, and there's words in Scotland apparently, and in other rural areas, you know, that express that experience. Well, you know, in English we don't have that, but English is about the least expressive language there is. So the actual sort of science behind this, yeah, is that we have these things called mirror neurons. So what happens is when you perform an action, certain parts of your brain will light up. But then when you see somebody else perform the same action, then the same areas of the brain will light up. And they believe this is the seat of empathy. So when we look at somebody doing something, our brain sort of reacts as though we're doing it, so we can feel what other people are experiencing. Okay? But what they found when they tested this is that you don't actually have to be in the same place and looking at what somebody's doing when your mirror neurons will fire. It also happens when you're connected to somebody and they do something, their mirror neurons fire and so do yours. That is the actual scientific basis for telepathy, but obviously the mainstream science will not sort of corroborate this. So it actually has been shown experimentally, but the experiments have been sort of discarded as with most groundbreaking science. So I'm just going to show you an illustration of that experiment.
The twins are going to be monitored for signs of telepathic communication. First, the boys will be separated to avoid physical communication. Then Damien will be subjected to a series of stimuli to see if his twin reacts.
Polygraph now.
Richard is connected to a polygraph machine by Guy Heseltine, a member of the American Polygraph Association. A polygraph detects physiological changes to the body that are invisible to the eye, but can be charted from moment to moment.
Okay, this one's going to go around your stomach.
Separate belts at the top and bottom of the chest record changes in breathing. Results appear on the two blue lines at the top of the computer screen. Electrodes measure electrical conductivity across the surface of the skin, recorded in green on the computer screen. An armband measures pulse rate. It also records any changes in blood pressure, the red line on the screen. Finally, Richard wears headphones to ensure that he doesn't hear what's taking place in the house during the trial. Downstairs, Damien concentrates on his absent twin by drawing his picture.
I'll draw him kicking the football.
He's a bit bored at the moment, isn't he?
Yes. Why did you do that for?
First, Damien is startled. Is it possible his reaction will trigger a reaction in his twin?
Just after the plates were dropped, it appears that there's an increase in the cardio activity, followed very closely by an increase in the skin resistance, which could well be significant.
Upstairs, Richard relaxes as Damien takes a second test.
I'm going to put your hand in this jar.
Blindfolded, he tries to find sweets in a jar. He discovers to his shock that the bottom of the jar holds nothing but ice-cold water.
Oh, he's got
Richard appears unaffected, but moments later, the polygraph chart reveals him taking a deep breath. Blood pressure and pulse also show a sudden change.
During the test, the child here was caused to have quite a significant movement, also in line with a deep breath, which may well be significant to what was going on downstairs.
Finally, Damien is startled by a balloon being burst. And the polygraph records changes in twin Richard's vital signs.
Over all three experiments, there's some kind of reaction that the child has experienced up here on each of the three tests. It could be construed that those reactions are as a result of some kind of activity downstairs.
Damien's reactions appear to provoke a subconscious reaction in Richard. But can any conclusions about telepathy be drawn from the test? Probably not.
So, bearing in mind, this is a BBC experiment, so, you know, they just show that, you know, separated kids have a reaction, and can anything be drawn? No, probably not. You know.
The graph clearly did that. It'd been better if you just showed a picture of the graph and when each thing happened, so if you look at the whole graph.
Well, I think there was a lot of subtle things going on there.
Yeah.
You know, when there was the guy was pointing at the screen, you know, the traces there. I mean, that didn't have to match up with what he was saying. So it didn't look like there was much of a reaction when with the first test. Yeah. So you don't know if they were actually matching up the real, you know, trace there, or the guy was just saying, okay, here we're measuring heart rate, and here we're doing this. You know, they could have just made it look like it was not much of a reaction. They also went on later on to say, well, he was in the same house, so there could have been some way he heard what was going on. Well, you know, that could have been easily solved by taking a kid into some other house and doing an experiment like that, but no, they have to put some doubt in there so that you know, the people think, well, yeah, it might be, but it might not. But the guy just said there's probably nothing you can take from that. So yeah, I'll ignore it. I don't know if anybody recognises this woman. Her name's Jill Bolte Taylor. She's actually a brain scientist who actually was having a stroke, and she was able to examine herself while she was having a stroke, or report on what was going on. And she was able to say that well, what was happening was the left-hand side of her brain kept shutting down, and every time it did, she found herself not being able to distinguish between herself and the surroundings. When she saw her hand on the wall, she couldn't tell where she ended and the wall began. And she felt her awareness encompass the whole room, and then beyond the room. She could feel beyond the room. And it seems that our right-hand side of our brain is connected to the environment, connected to everything. And the left-hand side of the brain grounds us in this material 3D world. Because every time her left-hand brain shut down, she expanded. And then when it came back online, she said it felt like everything was then crammed back into her brain and back into her body. She couldn't actually recognise the numbers on the telephone because the left-hand side of the brain deals with language and pattern recognition. She had to figure out how to dial a number. Whenever her left-hand side of the brain came online, she started dialing the number and covered up the numbers she'd already pushed. And then when it shut down again, she had to wait until it came back online. And when she did get on the phone, all she heard on the other end of the phone was woo, 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 because again the language processing was shut down. And when she tried to answer, all that came out was woo, woo, woo. So, as I said, the left-hand side of our brain grounds us into this reality, while the right-hand side is interconnected with everything. So, our education, and all Western education, is all about entraining the left-hand side of our brain. Things like art and music and dance and drama, those are the things that go straight to our right-hand side and exercise that side of our brain. But that's not what we do these days, is it? We're all about maths and numbers, language, pattern recognition.
It involves the other side as well.
Fleetingly. But no, the majority is the left-hand side of the brain. But that's it. We're being taught to be grounded into this reality, separate from everybody else. And my theory on this is that what's happening is that we're using telepathy every moment of every day. Right now, we're using telepathy. Okay, I'll expand on this later. But most of the thoughts that originate in your head, or you think originate in your head, are coming from everywhere else around you. Now, I've had an experience that whenever I go on the tube, I'm a kind of passive guy, you know. I don't hate anybody. I can't hate anybody. I can't not like people. But I get on the tube and I get very tense. And somebody comes in front of me, I'm like, get the fuck, you know, and you're breathing on me, you know, and I get sort of very angry and frustrated and annoyed, and for a long time I thought that was me, and I just didn't like the tube. But I realised it's everybody else. It's everybody else's thoughts coming into my head, and I think they're mine. And I'm reacting as though, oh, that's my thought, so I've got to be angry, I've got to be... And I realised as soon as I walk off the tube, I'm back to normal again, you know? It's that environment where everyone's pressed in together and, you know, annoyed, not happy to be there, and annoyed and everything. It just, all these thoughts bombarding you. Has anybody ever felt the same sort of thing? You go into a space and you start taking on the energy of that space. Yeah? Sorry?
Football stadium,
yeah.
solicitors and factory lads in the room.
Yeah.
Full and...
Now, in future, just
you reflect back their anger, so you get angry at them and they're angry at you.
yeah, that does. It's like a feedback loop. So in future, just find yourself, go into a space and be aware of any sudden changes in your mood and your sort of feelings. Because you might start to realise that some of these thoughts aren't yours. So, and the theory I have on this is that we're taking all these thoughts into our head all the time, but our brain is filtering out all but the one person we're focused on, who we can associate that thought with a kind of audio or visual stream. So all these thoughts are coming in, if somebody's talking to us, we say, that thought is the real one, because I can see that guy's lips moving. And we kind of assume that it's the sounds, those small mouth noises, is what is conveying the meaning. But it's not, the meaning's already here. But as I said, I'll expand on that in a little while. So telepathy comes, is existent in a lot of the things that we do every day, and a lot of the situations we're in. People who ride horses regularly say that they feel a kind of telepathy between themselves and the horse. The girl on the side there is my niece, and she tells me that when she's jumping, she doesn't actually have to do anything. She doesn't have to think about, do I have to pull back on the reins, or do I have to do this, or kick, or whatever horsey people do. But she thinks about what she has to do, and the horse does it. And when you get to that sort of that connection, that's how it works. You think, you feel what you want to do, and the horse just does it. And that's also my sister on the other side, and she is one of these people who can talk to animals. She can. I've seen her stand in the middle of an arena, and a stallion is running, sort of cantering around the track, and she'll say, "Jump that one," and the horse will jump it. "Miss that one," he'll miss it. And once she said, "Jump that one," and I always went, and she went, "Come here," like that, and the horse went. It came up to her, and they had an argument. They literally, the horse was going, "Argh!" So I said, "No, you're going to die." And in the end, she just slapped it around the face a little like, and the horse went, "Oh, okay." And then she went, "Get over there and do as I tell you." And the horse went, and then it did exactly what she said.
Avatar.
So, sorry?
Avatar.
Avatar.
The film.
Yeah.
Yeah, the connection with everything together.
Yeah.
The telepathic.
Oh yeah, it was almost like she was linked into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. The telepathy between owners and pets. I just love it. I was looking for something to illustrate it, and my favourite is the Afghan at the top. I mean, that is absolutely... Anyway, but again, Rupert Sheldrake did many experiments about owners and their pets. He did one experiment he went round to every vet in North London and asked them, "Have you ever had problems with making appointments for cats?" And every one of them said they had, because every time the owner makes an appointment for a cat, the cat knows, and it's not there when the owner comes to get it. It's not there. It knows. And also dogs, they absolutely know when their owners are coming home. And this is, again, proved experimentally. The dog sort of suddenly jumps up and goes by the door the moment the owner decides to get in the car to go home. So yeah, this is an actual phenomenon. Mothers and daughters, or mothers and children, mothers and children, sorry. Again, a experimentally proven phenomena is that a breastfeeding mother will start to leak milk when the baby's in distress, no matter where that baby is. It's just an actual link. And there's also a lot of evidence to say that link remains throughout their lives. Mothers will always know when their children are in trouble. So, some of you might have seen this. This link, this telepathic link, we have it from the earliest part of our lives. And this I just found amusing because these two babies obviously have this link, but they've seen their parents talk and they've just tried to mimic it. I don't know if you can see it. But there's real communication going on there. It's obviously the funniest baby ever. You see, there's turn-taking going on, and there's a conversation going on. So I could go on more, but later on, there's a section where they're talking, and suddenly both of them change direction and go and walk over to the sofa and climb it. Just one doesn't go and then the other. Simultaneously, they move and they go because they're in communication. And as I said, I think it's because they've seen their parents talk. They can only make one sound, so that's the language. But again, the meaning isn't being conveyed by the sounds they're making. It's the meaning's already there. So I've added this one in because these two twin girls were born prematurely, and one of them was very healthy. The other one was in trouble from the first moments, and that one was on the verge of dying when the nurse had the idea to put her twin in the incubator with her, and immediately the sickly girl stabilised, and then started breathing normally, and started to sleep. And while they were watching, the healthy girl put her arm around her. Now, we are under the impression that children or babies have no sense of what's going on around them. That's not true. They're in communication. They know what's going on between them. There's more going on than we've been led to believe. And some people haven't forgotten this. So I'm not going to go too much into this, but this is I was doing a bit of research on the Aborigines and their powers of telepathy, and I found quite a few references to it. This one, although you can't see it very well, is from a newspaper from 1848, where an Aborigine spoke to an audience of advertising executives, and he described how the Aborigines use telepathy on a daily basis. And in this instance, he described how they use smoke signals. Now, we've been kind of taught that smoke signals are the thing that give meaning. They go like this, and all of a sudden there's some kind of pattern in the sky, and that's people go, oh, that says tea's ready, But no, that's not the case. They use smoke signals to attract the attention of anybody who's around. And when another Aborigine notices a smoke signal in the air, they sit down, clear their mind, and wait for a message. And this is the mechanism that this guy described. Again, I started looking for some books. I'm not going to go too much into it, but I found many books that describe very similar occurrences, including this one. Don't know if anybody's ever come across it. Mutant Message Down Under. It's an American woman who spent I think 4 months travelling with a group of Aborigines. And one of the events she saw was that while they were walking, a young man from the tribe ran on ahead, and a couple of hours later, the head man fell to his knees and was just swaying, and the whole rest of the tribe sort of circled around him. And the woman was saying, well, what's going on? And they said, shh, be quiet. And she was told that he was receiving a message from the young man that ran ahead earlier on. And what he was saying was that he stopped and drank some water that was bad, and he doesn't feel very well, but he managed to catch a kangaroo. And he was asking for permission to cut the tail off the kangaroo, because that's the heaviest part, and just so he could carry the kangaroo back. And they gave him the permission to do so. A few hours later, while the rest of the tribe had stopped and started preparing a pit to roast the kangaroo, the young man arrived with the kangaroo with the tail missing on his back. And they were ready with medicine for him, and he was indeed sick. So this is something that is existent in the older tribes of this world. They still have this. The Maasai in Africa still have this ability, and it's well documented. We've just forgotten. So it's again the rationale for most of this is quantum entanglement. When you get two connected particles or things that are connected in some way, and you separate them. In the case of electrons, they're spinning. If you change the spin on one, the other one instantly changes to match. It doesn't matter how far apart they are. If you do something to one, the other one will respond. And that's been proven by... Yep.
Yeah, Brian Cox mentioned this in his talk in BBC. He actually talked about energy levels. He said one energy level and one can be in another galaxy forever. It's they've got to both change. One, they're both the same. And these things from the BBC are amazing.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't matter if one electron has been passed to one side of the universe and the other one is on the other side. You change one, the other one will respond. Because essentially, they're not separate. There's no such thing as separate. There's no such thing as empty space. There's no such thing as time. They're just illusions that we live in. And things like quantum computing and quantum teleportation, which is new, these rely on this fact of quantum entanglement. And the point is, at one point, if you believe the Big Bang Theory, everything in the universe was all connected in one place. And it's all spread apart, but it's still connected. So people also, you're entangling yourself with them. When you have a relationship with somebody, you are deeply entangled with them. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on the double slit experiment because there's a better explanation coming up later on. But just to mention that going back into quantum physics, there's this experiment called... Does anybody know the double slit experiment? Yeah, it's good. Okay. For those who don't, it's a very simple experiment. It shows that light acts both as a wave and as a particle. But the weird thing is, when you look at light when it's behaving as a wave, when you observe how how it behaves, it suddenly changes to act as though it's a particle.
It's exactly the same as the scientists got a problem actually with the quantum computer, because every time they go to work on the quantum computer, it stops working.
Yes.
So when they come away from it,
it works.
It works.
Again, because what this actually suggests, or more than suggests, it tells us that your consciousness has an effect on light and matter, because matter acts in exactly the same way. Yeah, your perception, your viewing the results, and I'm going to go on to I'll go into a deeper explanation later on, but the fact that you look at something and expect something causes that thing to coalesce into something real. Until you do, it's just a wave of possibility. But when you look at it, there it is. A scientist called Dean Radin did an experiment for this double slit experiment, and again, I'm not going to go too far into it, but he got a whole bunch of meditators to focus their attention on this experiment, okay? And they found that, I mentioned that if you look at this experiment running, you change the way it appears. Well, when they focused their attention on this experiment, all of a sudden it started to change, just because people were focusing their attention on the experiment, even though they weren't even in the same room. They focused their attention on the experiment, and the pattern changed. So this is Terence McKenna. Anybody know Terence McKenna?
Yeah.
Not personally, but he's dead now. But, he basically said that language is kind of true magic, and it's very mysterious, because he could have an idea in his head, make some small mouth noises, and all of a sudden that idea is in your head. But I believe that it's slightly different. I think the idea is already in your head, and we've just been fooled into believing that the small mouth noises are the carrier wave. I'll go into that. Yeah, only that whenever I find anything profound about the universe, I find that Douglas Adams has already written about it in one of his books. In this case, he talks about this race of people who were given telepathy, and the only way to stop themselves broadcasting every thought to everyone around them was to talk inanely about crap, and it blocks out the telepathy. So I think that's pretty much what's going on now. And if you look in the Bible, not that I imagine anybody does here, but they say about the Tower of Babel, that the gods interfered with man's power to communicate with each other. I'd like to suggest that it was actually our telepathic abilities that were disrupted, and we were given language so that we couldn't communicate with each other very easily. And to back that up, talk about the suppression factor of language. Now, has anybody heard of Alan Watts? Yeah, great philosopher. He speaks of the Hindu culture, where you go through 3 stages of life. First as a student, where you're just learning about life, and then you become a householder, so you get a house, get married, have kids, get a job, blah blah blah. And then once you've done that, and your children have grown up, you would go out into the forest, and you take a vow of silence. And after a little while, this vow of silence, you stop thinking in words. And apparently, when you get to that stage when you stop thinking in words, strange things happen. Like you're able to communicate with animals, and communicate with trees and plants. And apparently, you get the same kind of effect when you spend any sort of great length of time in a flotation tank when you're deprived of your senses. So again, some strange things going on.
I do it every day. I'm a gardener.
Okay.
I'm actually a gardener, so I'm on my own an awful lot, so I don't get a chance to talk. So I get this communication going on with nature.
Yeah?
All the time, yeah.
What you were saying about the quantum physics, was it you move closer to something and it moves away? That's what I'm
Oh no, it's not. It's when two particles are connected in some way. When they're separated, they're actually still connected. They're still the same. They still act as though they're still connected. So if you change one, no matter how far away the other one is, it responds.
Yeah, but he was saying that there was some. What did you say about when you went closer to the machine and it changed?
I'll actually go into that in detail a little later on, because I know it's vague, but this when I go into it, it will become clear. So why can't we use telepathy consciously? Well, one of the things is that we receive something like 2 billion sensory inputs every second. So right now you're sitting here, okay? Think about the shirt on your back, or whatever you're wearing. Can you feel it now? Now that you're thinking about it, can you feel the shirt? A minute ago you weren't aware that you were feeling your shirt on your back, because only 2,000 of those sensory inputs are registering in our conscious mind, because you don't want to be told you're wearing a shirt, you're wearing a shirt, you're wearing a shirt, because it's redundant. So we're only aware of 2,000 bits of the 2 billion bits that we're getting every second. And most of our awareness is subconscious. So if you imagine this tabletop to be your full awareness of the world around you, yeah, your conscious awareness is one tiny little pixel on this table. That's what you're consciously aware of out of this whole awareness, okay? And basically, it's extremely narrow. So it's very difficult to take control of our complete awareness. And I've got a little experiment. So I want you to see if you can try and sort of follow along with this one, okay?
Count how many times the players wearing white pass the ball.
So, how many guesses we got? 16. Anybody else? 13, 19, 17. Got 17. Okay, let's see how we did with our awareness exercises.
The correct answer is 16 passes. Did you spot the gorilla? For people who haven't seen or heard about a video like this before, about half missed the gorilla. If you knew about the gorilla, you probably saw it. But did you notice the curtain changing color or the player on the black team leaving the game? Let's rewind and watch it again. Here comes the gorilla, and there goes a player, and the curtain is changing from red to gold. When you're looking for a gorilla, you often miss other unexpected events.
See, your awareness is very, very narrow. And when you're focusing on one thing, lots of other things are going on, but you just miss it completely. So I had a theory about telepathy, okay, and it's inspired by a little experience I had again with some magical weed. I went to a party, and I'm not really a weed smoker at all, but I thought I'd have a. But I had an experience. I thought I'd experiment with this. So I had a huge hit from a bomb, yeah, the first time ever, and they warned me, it's like having a whole joint in a second, but I thought, and I settled down, and the first thing I noticed was I could hear and follow 6 different conversations in the room at once. I was hearing every word and processing it, and I also had this sudden idea of an experiment I could do because I realised that everybody was doing it as well, but I didn't know they were doing it. So the experiment was that I said something really vile and disgusting, and then as soon as I said it, the conversations went down in the room, and they like, what did he say? So they were, not only did they hear what I said, but they were also following the context of what I was saying. Which means we're all doing it all the time. We're all in a crowded room, we're hearing every single word that's in earshot, and we're following it in context. But somehow, we are focusing our awareness on one person. And it doesn't have to be that we're looking at that person. I've heard, somebody actually recorded something in the room, and I heard the actual noise level in that room, and you couldn't pick out an individual voice. It was just a hubbub. But somehow our brain is so sophisticated that it will focus in on one person that's speaking to us. And I could be speaking to you about something and notice a pretty girl over there, and I'm still focused on you, but it's not a question of looking at somebody and focusing, it's some kind of mental focus. So what's happening is that we're hearing all these voices, our brain is filtering everything out apart from the one we're focused on. Does that sound familiar compared to what I was saying earlier on, what I was thinking? So,
what I was going to say was, I can concur with what those babies were saying in regards to marijuana. Because did you know?
I don't think the babies were on there.
You know that your very first words are "guga gaga ganja." I'm not allowed to do this.
So if our voices aren't really designed for speaking, and I believe they're not. Language is foreign to us, and I don't think our voices are designed for language. So what do you think our voices are for? Now, I don't know if anyone's heard of cymatics. This is a piece of black card with a speaker underneath and some flour or some sand or something on top, and they're playing frequencies into the speaker. So as the frequency increases, what you're finding is patterns just suddenly appear, form appears, and as the frequency increases, you see the form gets more and more complicated, more and more regular, more and more complicated. And one interesting thing, which is why I don't believe in evolution, what happens? You see it didn't morph gently into a new shape. It suddenly shifts. I think that's what happens in evolution. We suddenly shift as our frequency increases. And as that frequency gets higher and higher, the pattern gets more and more complex. lifelike, they're sort of, you know, organic. It was sort of geometric before, now it's getting more organic. Could well be.
Yeah.
Could well be what crop circles are. Very, very high frequency sound.
It has been recorded, high frequency sound has been recorded in crop circles.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, if you look on the right hand side there, those patterns are when you get to really, really high frequencies. Yeah, you get some incredibly geometric, incredibly regular patterns. So sound frequency creates form. When you get to really high frequencies, sometimes when you look at the medium there in detail, you start seeing the medium start to rise off of the card and start moving around. You know, that could be what life is, for all we know. Sound creating form.
In the beginning was the word.
Well, in the beginning was the word.
Back to the Bible.
Yeah. Now, we have very, very sophisticated vocal equipment. Too sophisticated for just making small mouth noises. You know, Ella Fitzgerald can sing a perfect note that can shatter a glass. There's a chap called, I'll never get this name right, Ed Leedskalnin, who created something called Coral Castle. Anybody heard of it? Okay, a few of you. Coral Castle is this guy, this very slight Eastern European guy, maybe 100 pounds in weight, was able to build this huge monolithic castle with huge blocks of stone without any heavy equipment, all on his own, in a very short amount of time. And no, he wouldn't let anybody see him work. But sorry? And then he transported the whole lot from one place to another. But no, he wouldn't let anybody see him work. But there were a few people who were able to sneak in and see what was going on. And one person said that they saw him singing to the rocks. Very strange. Another two small boys were able to sneak in over the fence, and they saw what they said they saw was huge blocks of granite floating around like hydrogen balloons.
And you supposedly had some country very old.
Yeah, well, but for sound.
Yeah, operate on sound.
So it seems that sound has an effect on the physical world. Now, indeed, the first languages, like Sanskrit, the word was the physical effect that word had on the world. So it wasn't a language that we, as we know it, the words, the sounds that were made in these words were the actual effect that word had on the world. So like the word bang, yeah, we say, well, the word actually means the sound, yeah? But the words like, maybe there was a word like levitate, and it would cause things to levitate. So the sound frequencies that our voices can make would have an effect on the world.
I think that's what the Hare Krishnas believe that, but I don't know if it's necessarily true.
Well, you're free to believe that.
If ever you've read Education and Atlantis, and you find that the Atlantans knew all about sound and how to move objects. That's how the Great Pyramids were built.
That's what I believe.
They weren't built by the Egyptians.
No, of course
by the
not.
Atlantans.
Oh, I don't know who built. I know that the Egyptians
They were
didn't
built by
build
the
them.
Atlantans before the Egyptians came along.
I think he was offered the cheapest contract. They were very competitive in that.
But yeah, I believe that sound has more of an effect on the world than we know. And English is a language that's been manufactured. Okay, it's been manufactured to remove all power from the words that we use. Yeah. So, how do you learn telepathy? Sorry?
Believe in
Believe
it. You have
in
to be open-minded.
Exactly.
Right?
That's
Because
exactly.
otherwise the way of seeing people treat is blind.
Yeah.
But they refuse it no matter what happens.
That's it. That's the very first thing, to believe that it exists. I'll get into the power of belief later on, but and that power of belief is incredibly powerful. But you believe it exists, first of all, and the best thing to do is meditate, to be able to clear your mind, because in our world, our minds are hyper-stimulated. You know, everywhere you look, there's bright lights and adverts and things to look at, things to occupy your mind. Yeah, our minds can never be quiet. So if you are able to meditate and clear your mind, then you've got a chance to hear the quiet voice from from a telepathic contact. Another important thing is to practice with somebody you have an emotional bond with. As I said, you have to be connected to someone. You know, and that connection can be tenuous sometimes. You know, just talking to somebody for a few minutes, you know, creates an entanglement. But of course, if you're married to somebody for 20 years, then there's a deeper emotional bond there. Now, I actually did an experiment with my wife. We said, well, okay, well, I was talking about doing this talk, and I said, well, let's try this out. So she said that she was. I said that I was going to think of something in our 20 years together that was emotional, and she was going to have to guess what it was. And I said, I'm thinking of it now. And before I could finish what I was saying, she said, I was when my daughter burnt her legs and we were taking her in the car to the hospital. Now, the fact is, she burned her legs in the house. There was some hot tea, and there was a few minutes of really emotional stuff going on, and then we got into the car, then we got to the hospital, and there was other stuff going on. I was thinking of the time in the car going to the hospital, and she said exactly the same sequence. It could have been any part of that, but she chose exactly the sequence that I was thinking of. We reversed it, and she said that she was going to think of something. And how I experienced it was, she said, I'm going to think of something now. And I didn't even have to think about it. The information was just there. And I just blurted out. It was a car accident we had in 2005. Got it right. Then we got really excited. We said, let's try again. And we tried, but we were thinking about it too much. And that's one of the things here. Don't try too hard. And also, you know, you have some success, leave it for a while, then come back to it. Because, you know, it's trying too hard. And one of the points about this is, it's skill. We've been taught out of using this ability. You know, with our education, we've been taught not to give it any credence whatsoever. So, like any skill, you have to practice it. You have to keep practicing it until you get it honed. So keep practicing. And don't give up. So, we're going to have a little break now, and when we come back, we'll start talking about the fact that we're all shapeshifters. But you didn't know that, did you?
That's right. Thank you very much.